Here we go. UFC 285. The first card of this year, I'm going to be honest, that I am massively pumped for. The last couple pay-per-view cards, they've been good. The top fights are good, great, but the whole card as in its entirety was just didn't live up. This is a stacked card, top to bottom, T to B. Las Vegas, Nevada, Saturday night, UFC 285. The main event after a 3+ year layoff. John Bones Jones, the GOAT, the baddest man on the planet, is returning, and he's debuting at heavyweight. So John Jones, obviously, if you know about this, was a light heavyweight before this for the last, I don't know, I think it was 13 years of his since he started. He debuted 13 years, I think 13, 14 years. Now he's always hinted at moving up to heavyweight. He is finally moving up to heavyweight now at age 35, and he is taking on Cyril Gane, right? But first, I want to talk about John. John last fought February 2020. Now let's all remember February 2020, right? What was different about February 2020 than it is now, John? What happened?
The worldwide pandemic and it
Oh
crushed the
man,
business.
wasn't life different? Completely different. John Jones has not fought in those last 3 years. Right? I believe his fight was one of the last fights before the pandemic hit. He defended his light heavyweight title that night against Dominic Reyes. A lot of people thought Dominic Reyes actually won that fight. I'm one who doesn't believe that. I thought John won that fight.
Mm-hmm.
And then several months later, he vacated his light heavyweight championship and said he's moving up to heavyweight. There were a couple of contract disputes in between this 3-year timeline where they were trying to make John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. Francis, the former heavyweight champion of the world, who is now a free agent. That fight is not happening due to Ngannou and the UFC not being able to come to terms on a contract. So now you enter Cyril Gane, the man who fought Francis Ngannou last January for the heavyweight title. Francis beat him. Gane won, I think, you would say the first 2 rounds or whatever. And then after that, Francis kind of just wore on Gane. And you saw stuff from Gane that you hadn't seen before, where Ngannou was able to take him down with pretty much ease and just lay on top of him. Not really do any damage, just lay on top of him for a majority of the rest of the fight. And Gane not really offer anything up in resistance, either to get up or show offense. I think he threw up a couple of leg locks and ankle locks here and there, but they were not the smartest decisions to make at that point in time that he did it. So he lost that fight. And I should mention Francis was on basically one knee. He had tore his knee like all the ligaments in his knee. That's why he hasn't fought in last year. He's been getting recovery and the contract negotiations, but mostly the injury. So then Gane, takes his time off, obviously, and he fights in last September. We saw him in his home country of France fight Tai Tuivasa, where he got caught once in that fight, got dropped. Tai caught him, wasn't able to get the finish. But the rest of that fight, Cyril Gane was able to pretty much pick apart Tuivasa pretty handedly, I should say. The finish was just bad. Tuivasa was just getting beat up everywhere, legs, body, his head. It wasn't a pretty sight to see, especially Tai Tuivasa, who's a big fan favorite. He was just getting pummeled. He was able to get the finish in the 3rd round. So now we enter this fight, and the way I see it playing out is I see John Jones finishing Cyril Gane inside 4 rounds. I don't think Gane's wrestling is anywhere near Jones's ability. If Ngannou was able to take you down and hold and stay on top of you, John Jones is a infinite time better wrestler than Ngannou ever thinks about being. So, and his top game is insanely nasty. The elbows, the strikes that John throws, and the ferocity he throws with is just a vicious. There's a very mean intentions in that octagon. So I see John being able to finish. I think he's going to be able to get a takedown pretty much with ease. It'll be interesting to see him at heavyweight, how he carries the extra weight. He said he's going to be weighing in between 245 and 250 for this fight.
And he's usually like
Uh,
205, right?
he is usually he weight cuts to 205, and I think he really steps into the octagon maybe around 220-ish probably. So he's going to be carrying 20 plus more pounds of weight this time. It'll be interesting to see how his cardio holds up, his endurance, if he's able to keep that pressure the entire fight that we've known and grown accustomed to for John. I do believe, I don't have any doubts. I think John has done it the right way. 3 years is a little too long for me, especially now he's 35. Last time we saw him, he was 32 years old. That's basically the tail end of your prime is you've kind of wasted. But I think John is a special athlete. He's the GOAT for a reason. His fight IQ is second to none in mixed martial arts history. So I do believe that he's done it the right way. I think he's packed on the weight the right way, and I think he's going to go in there, and I think he's going to dominate Cyril Gane. I don't think Gane is going to be able to offer up any real resistance to John Jones. So John Jones, I believe, is going to be your new heavyweight champion of the world, becoming a not current two weight division champ, but he has now held the light heavyweight title and the heavyweight title, and he is now, in my opinion, I mean, he's already been the GOAT for years now. Now I think there's no question in anybody's mind. You can't make a case unless you want to talk, put the asterisks for the steroids and whatnot. John Jones is the greatest fighter to ever live, and I think across all combat sports. I'm including boxing. When I say the baddest man on the planet, the baddest man to ever live, John Jones would absolutely, no disrespect, mollywop a prime Muhammad Ali in a fight. Mike Tyson. Name the guys. I'm sorry, but when you incorporate wrestling and leg kicks and kicks in general, these guys ain't seeing John. It would be a nightmare. So I'm freaking pumped. I'm excited. I can't wait for John Jones's return. I'm a huge fan. Like I've said to you before, John, on the show and everybody watching, I'm a fan of greatness. And I just can't wait to see John Jones compete in the octagon. Did you have anything you wanted to say, John?
He has a 4-inch reach is one thing I noticed. 83.5 to I think it was 79. The other thing too, John Jones is 26-1 in his career, right? What was the moment that made him, that stamped him as the GOAT in his respective class? And the second question I have is, in the realm of UFC, how many GOATs do we have?
So 20, you bring up, first off, you bring up the reach, 84.5 for John, which I think is the record or tied for the record for longest reach in UFC and I think mixed martial arts history.
That's got 7'1" wingspan.
It's actually tied with this, John. Get this. John is 6'4". I think he's tied with Stefan Struve, who is a 7-footer fighter. And John has the same reach as that guy, I believe, or they're right there, which is just insane. So you bring up 26-1 too. I know you don't obviously know that much about MMA and the history of John Jones's one loss is a disqualification, where he was dominating a fight against Matt Hamill. He threw an illegal elbow, and because of, actually not even because of the elbow, it was because Matt Hamill's shoulder was torn out of its socket, I believe, and he couldn't continue, and the ref handled it poorly. And called it a disqualification. It was not a disqualification. John Jones was whooping that man's ass, threw a bad elbow, and got screwed with a disqualification. Okay, he is undefeated. Everybody knows John Jones is a undefeated mixed martial artist. That one loss is not a loss. Anyway,
listening, I am what you call a casual
fan. Yes, he is. It's fine. And for me personally, a disqualification is not a loss. It's a disqualification. It's not a win or a loss. You didn't win or lose. You cheated, or you did something to gain a competitive advantage that you're not supposed to do. You're disqualified, not lost or won. I don't know why it is considered a loss. But in terms of GOAT, how many GOATs are there? You'll hear GOAT thrown around in MMA, right? And it's really because, like, there's the pound for pound talk currently. There's the GOAT for who's the GOAT now, who's the GOAT overall, who's the greatest female fighter of all time. It's kind of like with any other sport, like, some people will say the GOAT is just an overused term nowadays, right? We all know that. And I think that it's just an overused term, especially in MMA. They don't really differentiate best currently. Like, you know how they say the best player in the world for NBA? That's what we're talking about right now. And then when we
Yeah.
talk GOAT, we talk, everybody in the past. MMA doesn't do very well at that. They'll just call and also UFC is sneaky with it. They're run very much like a pro wrestling organization where if you're fighting, so GSP was the greatest welterweight of all time. Everybody knows that. When he was fighting for the UFC, that's what they labeled him. Since he is retired, when Kamaru Usman was going on his reign, they started to call him the greatest welterweight of all time. It's what they do. It's sneaky. It's they want to portray this guy currently, who is currently fighting for them on their active roster, as this, bigger than life, larger than life person.
Love
So
the
the
event.
fan are like, oh wow, I'm witnessing, the great, because maybe I'm a new fan. UFC is still a early sport, growing sport. It's only 30. It's actually, this is the 30th anniversary of the UFC. This year is the 30th anniversary. So it's a very early sport, always new fans coming in. So they try and trick their new fans who, don't watch old fights and look up the stuff. But John is the GOAT. He's the number one GOAT, the greatest of all time. Really, the only argument would be he used steroids. And if you want to create a double list where steroids, non-steroids, that's whatever. Everybody used steroids back then. It's fine. And I have a different take on John Jones in that case, but we won't get into that now. Next up, we got the co-main event. Speaking of other GOATs, Valentina Shevchenko, the flyweight champion. She is one of the greatest female fighters of all time. Probably technique-wise, talent-wise, the best of all time. You know how we talk about Rodgers and Mahomes and those guys. She's kind of like that. Amanda's the GOAT, but Valentina's looked at as technically she is just an assassin, John. Okay, I'm not kidding when I say this. I truly would not be shocked if Valentina Shevchenko is a spy. Okay, this woman is unbelievable at what she does. She speaks like 6 or 7 different languages. She's an absolute beast in the cage. Her technique is second to none. She fights kind of like a robot, where it's just computing information, and this is she's fighting Alexa Grasso, the 6th ranked flyweight in the world, who I'm a big fan of. Alexa. I'm really I really like to see her rise, come up. Valentina is looking to defend her title for the 8th time. This is gonna be a tough fight for Grasso. Since coming up to flyweight, she's 4-0, but I do believe she needed to get one more fight against the top 5 flyweight to get ready for this fight. But she got offered it because of how much Valentina has ran through this division. Alexa, guess what? You're next up. Your name has now been called. Your number has been called. You are now up for Valentina. So it's going to be tough for her. I'll say this: if it's a Grasso is a Mexican-born fighter, very good in the stand-up, boxing especially. She has developed a pretty good ground game. She's improved it in her wrestling defense, her offense on the ground, her submission game. She has improved on that. But her bread and butter is the stand-up game, especially boxing. If it's a stand-up fight, I expect this to be an incredibly exciting and entertaining fight, but I don't believe it's going to be a stand-up fight. Valentina is a woman who is going to, and she alluded to it in her pre-fight press conference, she knows your weaknesses. She's going to fight you. The term I like to use is the path of least resistance. Why would I go at you where you're strongest? I believe that, I'm speaking as Valentina right now. I believe that my striking is better than yours, but you are a very good striker, and I'll give you your respect as an athlete and a competitor. Why would I fight you there and give you that slight chance, that slight belief that you can beat me when I can clinch you, take you down, and finish you? I think back to the Jessica Andrade fight. If anybody has seen that, this is what I believe that fight will emulate. She's going to look to clinch her, take her to the ground, and either crucifix her with the nasty elbows or get a submission victory. Yeah, I hope it's stand-up fight because it'll be more entertaining, but I don't believe so. I think Valentina's going to look to try and get the finish. Next up, just some other fights to highlight. We got Shavkat Shavkat Rachmanov. Sorry if I butchered that. It's the number 10th ranked welterweight in the world. He's undefeated from Kazakhstan, 16-0. John, all of his fights have ended in finish. He's finished every single one of his opponents. All right, 16-0. His UFC debut, he was able to beat a veteran in Cowboy Alex Oliveira. If you've watched MMA, you know him. He's a good fighter. He's not great or anything, but he's a good veteran, and he was able to sub him in the first round. His latest fight was against Neil Magny, a perennial gatekeeper in the welterweight division, top 15. He was able to sub him in the second round. He's going on against Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal is a very good stand-up fighter, has power that can change a fight. But I just think Shavkat is going to mix it up very well, and I think he's going to be able to get the finish. I'll be very shocked if Jeff Neal is able to win this fight. I just don't really see a path to victory, but I do expect a pretty exciting fight there. Next up, we got Gamrot, 7th ranked lightweight in the world. Short notice fight, taking on Jalen Turner. Turner was supposed to be fighting Dan Hooker. He suffered an injury, so entered Gamrot, who's taking a little bit of a risk. He's coming off a loss in October to Beneil Dariush. It's a short notice fight. He's the higher ranked fighter. He's 7. Turner's 10. And that's just risky. You don't really see that. So respect to Gamrot for taking this fight. It's gonna be tough. Listen, Jalen Turner is at 155 is 6'3". John Jones is 6'4", people. So this man is a tall 155er.
He's Gamrot's 5'9".
Yeah, 5'9", yes. And Turner's got a 77-inch reach to Gamrot's 71. So it's going to be interesting. Now, the height could play a little bit of a factor in terms of it's going to be easier for Gamrot to get the legs, get a hold of the legs. What's going to be more difficult is probably getting the takedown. The balance of those long limbs is going to, you're more balanced usually on one leg when you got those long ass limbs. You can bounce up and down and whatnot. You can get the arm to the ground while still kind of being up. So that's going to be tough for Gamrot to get that, but I do expect an exciting fight. And it'll be real interesting. Gamrot is 21-2. His only 2 losses are by decision. So Turner's going to, if he wants to create a name for himself, you go finish a guy like Gamrot, that's major big time.
Is that a big time upset? Is that the upset predicted?
I don't hold on. I think it could be. Listen, Turner's plus 180. It's going to be interesting. I don't want to make a confirmed bet on that because I just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but listen, anything is possible. Another fight that is going to be very exciting to wrap up the pay-per-view talk is the UFC debut of one Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel is being categorized as the next big thing, a future contender, possible future superstar in this sport. A standout wrestler in high school and Penn State. And if you know about Penn State, they're next level when it comes to almost any sport. Especially wrestling and
except
football.
Basketball.
Well, yeah, but they are. I do believe they are the most winningest collegiate team in the last decade, if I'm not mistaken, in their entire sports. Bo Nickel, you gotta watch it. I mean, he's 3-0. Okay, he's only had 3 pro MMA fights. I don't know how many amateur fights he's had. He had 2 fights on the Dana White Contender Series. He was able to pretty much dominate both of them. Yeah. So this is 3-0, John. His first fight, he won in 33 seconds by knockout. His second fight in the Dana White Contender Series, he won in 1 minute and 2 seconds by submission. His third fight, his second fight on the Dana White Contender Series, he won in round 1 in 52 seconds. Okay. He's taking on a guy in Jamie Pickett, and I feel bad for Jamie Pickett because he's being fed to a young, hungry lion who is looking to burst onto the scene with a lot of eyeballs going to be watching because of John Jones's return. Bo Nickel is opening up this pay-per-view. I truly believe if he dominates this fight, he's getting a top 15 guy probably next. And then I could see him if everything goes well, John, I could see him getting a title shot at 185, earliest mid 2024, latest end of 2024. If everything goes right, this kid's 3-0 because I think that they're going to push him. Everybody needs to watch Bo Nickel. Listen, you can go watch all three of his fights. They literally last less than 3 minutes combined. He's next level when it comes to wrestling. His grappling he ain't no slouch in the grappling department. He has faced a guy named Gordon Ryan, who is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world today. And it took Gordon Ryan, I think, 20 something minutes to get Bo Nickel and submit him. That's ludicrous. So people watch out for Bo Nickel. Remember the name. This is the next big time Bo two-sport athlete taken after a man of name of Bo Jackson. Bo Nickel, I think, is he's being credited. This kid is the next big thing.